Okay, welcome everybody. This is Greg Mears, and if you are here to see the power of positive leadership, you are in the right place. Let's give it a moment before we get started, so we can have other folks jump in and join. I see they're in the process of trying to get on the webinar now, so let's just give them another moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is the power of positive leadership. Using positive leadership to influence the outcome. And I want to introduce first myself. I'm Greg Mears, and you've probably joined this through callcenterbestpractices.com. I've been in the industry, the BPO industry, for quite some time. In operations, and as well as consulted for Fortune 500 companies on performance improvements and efficiency. And as I mentioned, I am the managing director of Call Center Best Practices, and I'm very happy to say that we have a special guest on today, Joe Guider. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hello, Greg. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good. And so let me give you a little background on Joe. Joe and I have worked together on several projects over the past couple of years, but Joe's background is very varied. He's spent over 25 years in professional business planning, technology, and project implementation. His skills include IT project management, business process reengineering, and training development. And he's driving results through leadership development for many of the Fortune 500 companies. In fact, Joe, on a lot of the projects that we worked on, you head up the leadership development process for the. So welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Greg. It's good to be here.
So I want to go through, Joe and I want to cover quite a few topics as it relates to the positive leadership group. So what we want to talk about are, what are the risks of a negative workplace? And we see this a lot in our travels. Employee engagement strategy, the talking points, understanding employee engagement, positive leadership and how it applies to, excuse me, employee engagement, and does positive leadership matter, positive leadership and influence. And as you can see, we're going to cover quite a few topics. But the foundation for positive leadership, and as you can tell, we're very big advocates for positive leadership, and we think that's the cornerstone of some critical positive influence within the organization. We're going to talk about the guiding principles of positive leadership. We're going to talk about positive leadership is a life-changing skill, how to handle leadership with care, how one person can make the difference, the path to positive leadership. Then we're going to talk about positive leadership modules, and then we'll get into some Q&A. All right? So at this point, Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take off, okay?
Very good. Very good. So we asked the question, what are the risks of a negative workplace? Does it matter? There's a lot of stress and anxiety that's reported in many surveys of employees across businesses, large and small, indeed around the world. Some of the things that come out as costs or expenses of negative leadership include a loss of productivity, a loss in time due to sick outs, and lack of motivation, higher attrition, and the cost associated with hiring and interviewing, poor customer service, which translates into loss of established customers, and a loss in revenues, and as I mentioned, anxiety and stress that make the workplace less comfortable than we think it should be, and we'll try to address some of those issues. So employee engagement strategy, a number of studies have been done around this topic to see what the effect is of employee engagement relative to the type of leadership that they have. In 2014, Deloitte did its study and said that close to 80% of businesses surveyed rated both retention and engagement as urgent or important, again, for those negative impacts that lack of engagement imposed on their firms. Yet another study found that 75% of organizations really do not address that issue of getting people engaged in the workplace, in the work, and in the organization. In fact, yet another study came up with the results that nearly 2/3 of U.S. employees are not fully engaged in their work. And we can put a dollar number on that. The cost of disengagement at a macro level and the lost productivity it causes is estimated to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars in the US alone. So why employee engagement fails leads us to some of the recommendations that we'll talk about throughout this webinar. Some companies don't know what employees really want. Again, does that matter? We're going to ask that question a couple of times. And it does if you do want your employees to be engaged and stay with your organization for as possible and produce effectively. Surveys and get data regarding employee engagement and issues about the workplace. Many firms don't know how to interpret the data or turn it into an engagement plan. Other firms report, and other reasons report, that they do a poor job of setting and communicating expectations that inspire engagement. And expectations, I think, plays a critical component in understanding what is capable and what should be part of an employee engagement plan. Values may be lacking that motivate employees. And we relate this not specifically only to employee engagement alone, but to the whole aspect of supervisory roles and management roles of how they communicate with their staffs and what they bring to the organization in terms of their managerial and leadership skills. Recognition is another important aspect. Lack of recognition, that pat on the back, becomes very important for some people. And relating back to our first bullet point here, companies may not know what employees really want. And it may be something as simple as positive recognition, but some managers miss that or don't incorporate it into their leadership style. And finally, on a larger scale, they don't have a culture that encourages employees to thrive. That's one of the other macro level aspects that we'll talk about. So poor results, as we've seen in a number of surveys, from employee engagement efforts should influence the way companies define and manage engagement. So the question then becomes, what influences employees to engage? And the answer is, it may be many things. It could be frequent recognition. It could be the setting of clear expectations and goals. It could be constant pulse taking in terms of daily mentoring and coaching and asking questions. It could be a raise, or it could be other things as well. I think an important point that comes out of many of the studies is that people, and we're talking about staff now, people who work for us, differ in what they value. And for a manager to understand those differences will influence and impact the way that they motivate people. The word expectations again. Expectations lead to motivation. And from a study presented by Edward Lawler, he says people engage in behaviors that they expect will lead to rewards that they value. So keeping the motivation in front of the leaders, the managers, in terms of what motivates each and every one of the people who work for us is very important in determining how the people will be engaged and to what extent they will be. So the talking points that we're going to intertwine into the points that we'll be talking about starts with a question. Does positive leadership really matter? Does it make a difference in performance and engagement? If it does, then we should do something about that. Already in terms of the management style and the way that we address our leadership roles. What is it that motivates employees to engage? As we mentioned in the previous slide, it could be any number of things, including some that are not within our radar at the moment. And expectations about employee engagement. What level of success might we expect? So in understanding employee engagement, then we did some research and came up with some of the characteristics of employee engagement. They may include general happiness in the job, happiness to be working for this organization, and satisfaction with the way it conducts itself. One may have pride in their own work or the purpose of that work, and it may show up as willingness to drive the business success and act in the best interest of the employer itself. At perhaps a more extreme end, you see the definition for Gallup saying it's working with passion and finding a profound connections to one's company. What we're suggesting is that engagement may be some of those things or all of those things, but it needn't be all of those things to in fact have the employee engaged. But it's important that they make that connection with the work in order to be effective. From a study that looked at the differences between whether a company that was more than 50% engaged, that is to say 50% of the employees based on a survey were indeed engaged in the work that they were doing for one or more of the reasons just discussed, clearly showed improvements over those that had less than 50% engaged. So we'll take one example. For example, revenue growth was 84% compared to 69% in the company that was more than 50% engaged. We also saw improvements and better performance as far as customer retention, the average sale, the average receipt, as well as the profit margin.
Yeah, Joe, you know, it's interesting, the results for the percentage increase above 50% engagement is quite substantial.
So does positive leadership really matter? According to the authors of this particular study, it matters greatly in terms of enhancement of employee well-being and the engagement that's expected in terms of the participation of the employees. And that directly links to key business outcomes, some of which, again, were showed on the previous slide. So the results validate the beliefs and hypothesis that those managers who do approach the task of leadership from a positive perspective will in fact produce greater results for the purpose and mission of the firm, as well as create an atmosphere that people enjoy and hope to participate in and look forward to coming to as part of their work effort in their lives. So how do leaders influence, particularly in a positive way? One is that they embody optimism. They believe that through their own activities and through their own self-esteem and willingness to participate and be successful, that they will influence and be a model for others and drive others to be optimistic and positive looking as well. They elevate morale. They point toward the positive and go beyond just a few people doing the right things and involving the whole organization to act collectively to attain the goals of the organization. They enhance inquiry. And in brief, what that's suggesting is that they communicate. And it's not just one-way communication, but it is give and take with the staff, listening to ideas, probing questions for understanding and deeper meaning, and involving people in the decision-making. And they value people above all things. In fact, it is the people who, in the end, produce the results that is the mission of the unit within the organization and of the organization itself. So people should be valued within each unit, in each organization, and certainly throughout the entire business. What we've listed here are what we consider the foundations for positive leadership. The first, self-esteem, confidence and a winning attitude that I can do and that as a leader, I'm going to make you believe that you can do wonderful things as well and achieve. And the second bullet point addresses that. It's not just myself as leader or an individual, but it is a culture achievement for all of us, recognized and encouraged throughout the organization. The employee engagement targets refer to understanding the individual needs that drive performance for each individual within the group. There may be a collective set of targets, but the leader who is paying attention to the individuals will focus on their needs and apply them when needed to keep the unit operating properly. And then there's a shared commitment both to the purpose of the business and to the value of each other within the organization to create that culture in which everyone believes that they contribute to the contribution to the organization and support each other as part of a team. Our guiding principles, which lead us toward an endorsement of positive leadership and a program to help boost positive leadership, is that positive leadership can be a life-changing skill. Effective leadership creates an environment of well-being that impacts persons, including the leader, both at the work site and in their personal lives, their family lives, and their social lives. A positive outlook will make the whole landscape, the whole vista look much better to each of the persons within the organization. Handle leadership with care. The leadership style cannot be inconsistent. It can be consistent in terms of the behavior relative to a situation or an event, but the positive leadership itself, including those moments when there's discipline or coaching from a perspective of inadequate results, needs to be consistent and shown every day. The handle leadership with care suggests that the leadership should be in focus every day as part of the manager's and supervisor's role and purpose in the organization. And finally, one person can make a difference. It can begin with one person. In our business experience, we've seen a change in leadership, if you will, of a supervisor or mid-level manager who can transform an organization because of their approach to the work and the value that they place on the people. It starts with one person and can move throughout the organization and embellish the opportunity for everyone who works with that person. Positive leadership is a life-changing skill. How do we get there? Well, the suggestion is to choose success. Have the right positive outlook that I can achieve and that I can do. So there should be a strategy to motivate oneself as a leader, as a manager, and others as well. The next point is to keep success close at hand. Build from the accomplishments that you already have and understand what your staff is capable of from a foundation of success. Don't put them into situations where they will likely fail or become anxious or become even fearful of the possibility of failure, but rather build from success and allow them to take risks and make failures an opportunity to learn or to quickly remediate in terms of making it a successful application going forward. And always make others successful. Teach them, lead them, remind them about the right approach, and reward them with recognition when they do show signs of success. Start with yourself in terms of handling leadership with care. You've got to be the focal point and the center point for creating that level of self-worth and self-esteem. Reinforce your own strengths and recognize that you may have limitations and do something about that in terms of your leadership style. That could be training or practice or rehearsal in those areas where you feel you do have some limitations, but begin with yourself and then begin to spread it by supporting the team and sharing the wealth of positive attitude through reinforcement and reminders in coaching with the rest of the team. One person can make a difference. So the look of a positive leadership are behaviors and skills to demonstrate positive outcome. What does that look like? Well, it could be making other people feel like winners too. You want to present that winning attitude yourself and make other people feel that they are part of that winning team and winning attitude and winning streak. Recognize them as members of a group as well as individuals. So you can say, thank you, Mary, for the work that you did this week, whether it was working extra time or tackling a particularly difficult piece of the project, and you've made it better for all of us. We are all part of a team and we all benefited for your contribution. Make sure that the recognition is appropriate for the activity. Don't overpraise something that is slight in terms of contribution, because the sincerity that people will sense from it will not be as strong, and the trust in the leadership style will not be as great as it should be otherwise. And tailor your recognition so that it's timely. Don't wait to give feedback, either constructive feedback or laudatory feedback, far after the event took place. So these are some of the behaviors and skills to demonstrate positive outcomes and positive leadership. In so doing, we're spreading the skill. People are watching and looking at your leadership style, and it works. People will recognize that it works. People will recognize that you have a good relationship with your management as well as the team itself. And in so doing, you are systematically preparing new leaders that will take on new roles, take more risks and responsibilities, and maybe even take over a supervisory position at some point in the future. And finally, success is contagious. If one person sees the success that others are having, they will want to join that group and join in the activities of that group and the success of that group and contribute in a significant way. What are the paths to positive leadership? One is to lead for results. We could strive hard to reach metrics with a negative, knuckle down attitude and perhaps hit some of our metrics, but the overall culture of the organization will not be as strong as if the results that you're also looking for, in addition to performance metrics, has to do with some of the softer issues like satisfaction and what we referred to before as employee engagement, a feeling of purpose and understanding and belonging to the organization. Showcase your leadership skills and do that every day. The coaching, the mentoring, the meetings that you may have, the feedback that you provide is something that needs to take place every day. The role of the supervisor and manager is not the same activities as those that you are managing. It's rather more instructive, it's rather more inspirational, and showcasing your leadership skills solidifies your position as someone that they trust and that they're happy to work for. And finally, a path is to recognize that it takes two to engage. Just blasting out orders and making threats will not engage another person. They will be fearful. They are most likely looking for another job in that type of environment. So recognize the people and the achievements. They are inseparable. People and the jobs that they do and the contributions that they make are what make your organization successful.
Joe, I appreciate you walking through that particular information regarding positive leadership, and certainly the assertion is that positive leadership is a learned or can be a learned skill that helps drive employee engagement, and employee engagement helps drive a whole variety of different positive results within an organization. So we'll make a transition right now. We, as part of cost center best practices, we've developed a program called Leading for Results. And one of the particular modules in that is positive leadership. And I want to talk about that. It's really two components of positive leadership modules. Within that, there's a participant guide and there's a facilitator guide, and they're designed to help support the overall assertion that positive leadership can be learned, and it helps drive employee engagement. So, we talk about this particular module. There's a participant guide that covers a variety of different things, and I'll get ready to go into some more detail about that. But that allows your leadership team to be on the receiving end of learning the skill sets that help drive that employee engagement. And on the opposite end, the facilitator guide allows the trainer or the leader of the group to help drive and walk people through that process, if that makes sense. So when we talk about the participant guide, on the left-hand side, I want to show you this. This is our results-driven agenda for this particular positive leadership module. And then on the right-hand side, we have a sample of Accentuate the Positive. So it gives you kind of a flavor of the agenda and the step-by-step process that people within this training go through. And here's a snapshot, kind of a snapshot blown up of the learning objectives. And if you notice, participants will understand the difference between influence and authority. And, influence and authority really dictates how successful. And, for instance, if I have authority and I say, you do this, well, you may do it once or twice because you may be afraid of my bite. But what's more important is my ability to influence you, and my ability. You ever heard the phrase, his team will follow him through fire, or will knock down the wall to achieve the results they need to? That's driven by influence and not by authority. Authority is short-lived. But anyway, so I want to go into detail on the learning objectives. After completing this module, participants will be able to explain the power of positive reinforcement, helps develop the skill in dealing with change, develop skills in using positive leadership, how to build self-esteem, accentuate the positive, positive reinforcement, and positive feedback. And as you can see, all of these are critical in the overall scheme of positive leadership. Now, on a facilitator's guide, this is just a snapshot of the guide that helps the trainer or the leadership of the group drive and follow and lead the overall positive leadership participants. So, everybody, the person that's going to facilitate this training will have this guide to help them, and it helps identify the important components, the next steps required in this very critical training. So, we've rolled this out. Joe and I have rolled this out, and we've seen, with positive leadership, it's pretty amazing the results that you can get. I mean, we have 100% success rate. We know if you drive things in a positive nature, you're going to drive employee engagement in a positive direction. And once you drive employee engagement in the direction that you need to go, you'll see all aspects of performance improve. And so we saw reduction in attrition by 75%. We saw improved attendance by 65%. So this stuff really works. So normally the positive leadership module set, which includes both the participant guide and the facilitator guide, sells for $147, and it's part of the overall Leading for Results training program. But what we're doing is, because of, we want to thank you for, and we want to reward you for spending time on this webinar and walking through and sharing 30 to 45 minutes of your time. We do have a webinar special that we are offering both the leadership, the participant guide and the facilitator guide for $97. But what's important is we also have a fast start webinar, which is basically roll your sleeves up meeting to jumpstart positive leadership within your organization. We'll share strategies on how to present and get everybody focused on positive leadership and help to drive that employee engagement. We'll show you how to assess the positive results that you're receiving, and we'll help you answer any questions that you may have. So we'll provide some pretty good level detail on how to go about implementing it and execution, how to assess the results that you're getting, and how to solve some problems as you're working through the system. There is a money-back guarantee, 60 days. So we want you to get these modules in your hand, try them, get a feel, jump on the Fast Start webinar, get your questions answered, figure out how to implement, and give it a test. And then, give it a college try and the value that you have. So the risk, we transfer that risk. So you have 60 days to try that entire process. So at this point in time, that you'll see the URL there, callcenterbestpractices.com/positive-leadership-special. If you type that link into your browser, that will take you to, excuse me, let me grab a drink here. That will take you to the URL where you can get the discount. So, Joe, I've got some questions coming in. Do you have some time that we can address these questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, let me get these organized. Give me 1 second here. All right. Okay, question number 1. You had mentioned, we talked about these modules having a participant and a facilitator guide. So if we don't have a facilitator, do you have that service available?
I'll answer that one, Craig. The answer is yes, we do. We've provided this service for companies actually all around the world. Some of our consulting has been international. So we've most recently done one in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for an international finance company. And that went over very, very well. So we can do that, and we're happy to do that. And just contact Greg at the site and find out more information, as we would want some information about the size of the staff and the dates that you would be interested in as well. The facilitator guide is designed to give action steps to someone who can make the training more interactive and more vital for the participants. If you do not have someone who is comfortable in that position, we'd be certainly happy to conduct the training for you. But we'd also while we're there, we'd like to work with someone that you might designate as a trainer in the future, so that this training module has a very long shelf life and adds value over time.
Yeah, good stuff. It's fun. It's interesting. I've got another question that's kind of coming in that relates to this. It is, how is the product delivered? And I'll handle that. Once you go through the process and you could purchase this product for $147. I recommend that you go to the URL that's showing on the page right now, which is callcenterbestpractices.com/positive-leadership-special. And if you type that URL into your browser, you go to a sales page that offers the product for the reduced price of $97. And as soon as you go through the purchasing process, you'll have immediate access to that. So what we do is we offer, and we want you to go to the membership page for that, because there's some information about how to effectively use the facilitator's guide. But both modules and the directions on how to use the facilitator guide are on the page, and you can download an electronic version of each, the facilitator guide and the participant guide. And from there, what you can do is, if you're going to train, say you have 10 people on your team that you want to put through the positive leadership training. So you download the one copy of the digital version, and what you can do from there is just make duplicate copies for each member of your team. So this is something that's not specific to one person. This is something that you could utilize within your organization to train and bring your entire frontline leadership up to speed from a positive leadership perspective. Do you think that answers the question, Joe?
I think it does. I think it answers it very well, Greg.
Okay. The next question looks like coming in from Sally is, who is this training program for? Who's positive leadership for? Do you want to handle that one, or do you want me to handle that, Joe?
Well, maybe I do have some comments about that, Greg, and feel free to add your own. I think it's a great question, by the way, and we thought a great deal about this in terms of the materials that you'll see in print and the way we conduct the training when we go on site, and that would be a useful thing that we'd like to share with you if you do go ahead and engage yourself in the module. The positive leadership conversation and focus of this training is both for the person who has the title of supervisor or manager, but is very much also for the people who are subordinate, if you will, or report to that manager or supervisor. One of the points that we made in our conversation today is that there needs to be, or should be, a culture of success, a culture of positive attitude. And if that remains only with the supervisor or manager, then we're coming up short of what we would consider a target or goal. So during the training, for example, we talk about the value of success and of self-esteem from the beginning as part of the participants' activity, to encourage and promote the idea that success builds success, and that in some ways we are all successful, and we need to find out those things or remind ourselves what we're good at and continue to leverage those strengths to become more valuable and more versatile over time. Greg?
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Let me. I got a couple more questions coming in. Let me just see if I can't get these organized. Oh, here's a really good one. When you talk about self-esteem, how impactful is that? Joe, you want to fill that one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think self-esteem is probably step one in terms of building, let's call it a healthy organization. That means one where there is employee engagement, where people do come to work, where they have a sense of satisfaction, maybe even happiness, or liking for the job that they have. If they are anxious or fearful of failure or disappointing a manager or doing something wrong or being scolded for it or embarrassed, then we have a situation that is very, very unhealthy. So I think the first step in moving towards a more positive attitude is establishing that basis, the foundation that everyone believes that they bring value to the organization and contribute in a meaningful way. So yes, very, very important.
Awesome, awesome. And it looks like this is the last question coming in so far. how long does it take to deliver this training? I could field that if you'd like, or I could throw it to you, Joe. How do you want to handle?
Again, I feel a little bit talkative right now, Greg. So let me make one comment, and then perhaps you can wrap it up. As I was answering some of the questions and thinking about what people were asking, I'd like to give a perspective on this particular module versus the whole series. Our last webinar was about the role of the supervisor, and there we talked about many topics, but some that included the activities of a supervisor, what the role of a supervisor was. This particular module focuses on positive attitude, on positive leadership. So there's an assumption made that things like primary activities of a supervisor are understood or in place, but there's an atmosphere that dampens or even stifles the productivity of the unit, or in fact of the organization itself. So in this particular module, we're focusing, as I said, specifically on and underscoring the importance of positive attitude relative to all of the other things that involves leadership and management and leading for results, including things like, you know, communications or building team spirit in a strategic way. So that brings me to how long does it take to do this particular module? The activity I believe can be done in half a day. I think a full day is possible if some of the activities are lengthened and broadened, and there's ample time for conversation and revisiting some of these things. But it is designed to, this particular module is designed to be offered in a half-day session.
Good stuff. You know, it's interesting because you know, I'm from the call center world, and time is extremely limited. So it's something that you can accomplish in a half a day, or if you even need to stress and drive and reinforce some things in it, and you might need to extend it out. That gives you that flexibility is definitely a good thing. And you know, one thing that's nice is these particular modules and tools are very flexible to really help drive what's important within your organization. So it really does a nice service for the operations teams, the training departments, or the development departments within the organizations to help drive that. So you know, I hate the importance and the flexibility of this. So okay, I don't want to dominate too much time for everybody. I know we've been on for what, about 45 minutes to an hour. I think it's been a great session, and I want to thank you, Joe, for providing some insight into positive leadership and how it influences employee engagement and the importance of employee engagement on overall job performance and satisfaction. So thank you again, Joe.
My pleasure, Greg. It's a great topic. I enjoy participating. Thanks again.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. So if you guys have any questions, you know, you'll have, you know, just go to the URL that's listed on the Q&A page, and you'll have an opportunity to certainly interact and engage with me. And if there's anything for Joe, I'll make sure that to include him and make sure he's abreast of the situation. So again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. And Joe, thank you for again for providing a nice walkthrough on positive leadership.
You're most welcome. Take care.
Everybody have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.